If you've got a pulse, you've got a purpose. Spirit 1053, I'm Erica. And just days ago, we heard about a man who went into cardiac arrest at the Burlington Costco. And thanks to the good Lord, a hero from Idaho and a really cool app that everybody needs to know about, that man got to live and go to his granddaughter's birthday. What a privilege to welcome Shannon Smith from PulsePoint, the app that is saving lives, to the morning show. Hey, thank you for being here. It means so much.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Shannon, for somebody who is hearing about PulsePoint for the first time, what is it and who thought this up?
So PulsePoint was actually the brainchild of a fire chief in San Ramon Valley, California. He was actually sitting at lunch one day, heard some sirens off in the distance and thought, I wonder where my crews are heading. And then all of a sudden, a huge fire truck pulls up right next to where he's having lunch. He runs out to meet his crew, and it happened that a gentleman in a business just directly to where he was having lunch, just next door, had suffered a cardiac arrest and unfortunately passed away. And it just, to him, was, here I am, the fire chief, I'm CPR trained, I had an AED in my car. If I had only known I was the closest resource to this patient, I could have done more. So, this is like around the advent of all these GPS-located cell phones back in the early 2010s. And he thought, we really do know where people are based on their locations of their cell phones. Could we be utilizing that just like a firefighter uses a pager? And that was the sort of inception of PulsePoint in California, in Northern California. And it is now spread to about 5,400 communities across North America.
That is incredible. The fact is, this fire chief could have said, look, I'm doing all I can in this world, but he decided, nope, I want to do more. That's so inspiring. How does he feel knowing that lives are being saved because of this app?
Well, so Richard Price is the firefighter and fire chief who sort of started this with the support of his entire fire district. And then moved to becoming a nonprofit so we could service additional communities all over the country. I think it's incredibly rewarding. I've been with the foundation now for 10 years. I could tell you that for our very small nonprofit team, every time we hear of a save, just like the one in Washington, it is something we share across from our engineers to our community engagement staff to our, down the line, because we're all so passionate about this. And I could remember the first save that I ever worked on. And it was something that I still keep in touch with those people involved. And it never ceases to amaze me how emotionally attached I become to our responders and our survivors. And just knowing how, cardiac arrest survival is less than 10% outside of the hospital. So we know what an crazy, amalgamation of all these different things that have to come together to actually save a life. And that is why PulsePoint was created, is to put the right person in the right place at the right time. Instead of having to witness a cardiac event, you just need to be near it. So for our whole team, it never stops being emotional for us. We get so excited every time we hear of a save, which is a lot more often than it was back 10 years ago. We're in a lot more places now.
Wow. So you got to tell the story of your first save. What happened?
Well, I'm trying to think of it was either my first save or the most emotional one for me was probably, it was in Spokane, Washington. It was a 5-week-old baby boy. Was out shopping with his mom and his sisters at a dance studio getting tutus for ballet class, and he stopped breathing, turned blue. His mom, started screaming. Someone needs to call 911. The shop clerk, who was a young woman, called 911, and crews were all dispatched. There was no crew within the radius. They were all dispatched to other calls. It was a smaller area. And it happened to be a mechanic who was literally under the car working on an engine, grease on his hands, got a PulsePoint alert. He's CPR trained and was a volunteer EMT. Got there first, did rescue breathing, and ended up saving this little guy's life. That little guy, I just talked to his family, just turned 11. And it really not only was moving for our family, of course, his family, but also the responder. That responder goes and visits that family. They have a great relationship. Because we know that young little Nolan would not be here today without that response. Even the fire chief of that department said we just didn't have resource nearby. And with cardiac arrest every second counts. Your chances of survival decrease by 10% for every minute you go without intervention. So,
Oh.
by 10 minutes, you're dead. By 5 or 6 minutes, there's the start of brain damage. So every one of those seconds counts. And that has stuck with me. I'll never stop getting emotional about that one. I think especially because I have kids around the same age, that one really sticks.
Oh, please don't ever stop getting emotional. How incredible. Shannon, I mean, I feel like even thinking about the Burlington story, it makes me want to learn CPR. How would you encourage someone? Why is it important to do that?
So CPR is so incredibly easy to learn. Years ago, the American Red Cross and the American Heart Association said, we really encourage hands-only CPR. So I think the fear of mouth to mouth or
Yeah.
having to know all these steps is no longer really a barrier. CPR education is so easy to find. You can Google it online. You'll often find your local fire department offering classes. You can certainly go to your local AHA or American Red Cross for classes. PulsePoint, you don't need to be certified. You simply need to be trained, meaning you could take an online course or do a nice refresher. We don't ask for verification of your certification. So if you are trained in hands-only CPR, we encourage everyone to download PulsePoint Respond, opt into CPR alerts, because even if you're not in a community that's currently served by PulsePoint, you could be traveling to one. That was the case for the Washington incident with Burlington. This gentleman was from Coeur d'Alene. He happened to be on the west side of Washington. He wasn't even from that area. So he was happening to travel in a completely different community. We've seen firefighters from Portland, Oregon save a life in Kauai. It's
Wow.
just, we know where you are. So if you're in a PulsePoint connected community while you're traveling or where you work or while you're on vacation, you never know when you might be the closest resource and get that CPR needed alert.
Amazing. Shannon, have you ever done CPR in a situation?
I have not, thank goodness. I've been CPR trained, I think, since I was 13 from a babysitter course.
Yeah.
I just had both my girls CPR trained in a babysitter course.
Oh.
It's so easy. We actually have an AED in our house. The girls know how to use that at just 12 and 13 years old. So it really is a simple thing to learn and get people. I think there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, but every single state has Good Samaritan laws that protect you. If you're doing CPR or applying an AED or defibrillator in the best interest of that patient, there's no liability. And I once heard a doctor say, even mediocre CPR is better than no CPR at all.
Oh, that's relief.
So
Yeah.
we are just always encouraging people to, learn CPR, download the app, and you never know where you could be the closest resource and help save a life.
I love that you're having your girls learn. And I feel like this is the point in summer, Shannon, where it's like we're running out of ideas of things to do with our kids. But this could save a life if we enroll our kids in a CPR class.
Absolutely. I remember when I was, a new mom and I had to take a class on how to put in a car seat. And I always thought, how interesting that I have to take a class to put in a car seat, but I don't have to take a class to administer infant CPR. I'm much more likely to need that skill. So I find it, really rewarding to know. I think there was a lot of apathy around learning CPR. When am I ever going to use it? When am I ever going to actually witness a cardiac event? There's 350,000 out-of-hospital cardiac events every year in the U.S., and you're most likely to witness one that is a family member or a close friend. But you don't have to witness anymore. PulsePoint really says if you're within a 2-block radius, you could be the floor above in a building, the store next door. You could be just down the street or around the corner. You might not see the event, but you still could be the closest resource. So it's really putting, connecting those dots for a community.
Oh, Shannon Smith from PulsePoint, thank you for hanging out with us on the show. This has been wonderful. So appreciate you. And God bless all of you for the work you do.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you allowing us to tell a little bit of our story.